The story of hell and death. Can you change before it's too late? Have you ever wondered, when your life is just one step away from death, what will you encounter? A blinding light, a different world, or a divine presence? Near-death experiences, moments where life and death intersect, have caused millions of people to completely change their perspective on this world. In today's video, I will tell you the story of a man who faced death and encountered an unexplainable presence. A presence that made him no longer fear death. But the strange thing is, this is not what you think. Could it be a miracle, or just a reaction of the brain on the brink of life and death? You won't be able to guess. I cannot clearly remember the moment I died. Not sure if it was from an accident, illness, or simply an unexpected death. But what I remember most vividly is the first moment my soul left my body. I did not feel pain, just a fading away, like a gentle breeze blowing through untouchable, impossible to hold. A silent departure, no sound, no disturbance. But immediately after I let go of my body, a strange sensation appeared. I felt as though I had entered a completely different space, a strange place where none of my senses could identify anything. Around me was a dense darkness, as if the earth and sky no longer existed. In that space, there was no light, no warmth, only a suffocating stillness. The sensation left me bewildered, unable to understand where I was or what awaited me. Then suddenly, I felt myself being pulled forward, not by my legs, not by any physical movement, but by an invisible force, a powerful force as though it were taking me, pulling me forward, irresistibly. I felt as if I were being sucked into a vortex with no way to stop, no way to turn back. I heard groaning, crying from afar, sounds like they were coming deep from the earth, echoing in waves like a song of endless suffering. I could not distinguish where it came from, but it was everywhere, surrounding me, crashing down upon my soul. And then I saw a faint, dim light, like the light of a dying oil lamp. It wasn't bright, but just a weak, fragile streak of light. And then I realized this light was not the light of life, not salvation, but the only streak of light in a desperate space. This light led me through a long, narrow corridor, full of gloomy, dark walls, as if I were walking into a place with no way out, no way back. Suddenly, I found myself standing before a massive door, a heavy iron door, adorned with strange shapes and writings I could not read. There was a cold sensation emanating from the door, as if it were a threshold between life and death, between heaven and hell. I could not stop, and an invisible force pushed me towards the door. When I placed my hand on it, the door opened quietly, with no sound. As soon as the door opened, I felt a rush of cold air, indescribable. I stepped through the threshold, and everything around me suddenly changed completely. Hell. Yes, I had arrived there. I cannot explain in words what I saw, but I will try. Before me was an enormous, endless space, where only darkness and fire existed. The flames were not ordinary flames. They did not have a warm light, but instead, they were blue, fierce, and cold, burning not with heat, but with pain, despair, and guilt. I saw tortured souls suspended in the gloomy space, unable to move, unable to escape. These souls were bound in endless agony. They had no bodies, only twisted, shadowy forms, no longer human, but the ghosts of suffering. They could not scream, could not cry. They could only moan in silent pain. One of them, a soul that appeared to be a middle-aged man, looked at me with hollow, soulless eyes. In those eyes, there was no hope, no life, only acceptance, a resignation that he could never escape, that he would be trapped here forever. I dared not look too long into those eyes. A feeling of guilt welled up inside me, an understanding that this soul, like so many others, had committed unforgivable sins. And when I turned away, I saw another image, a sight that horrified me. On the blue flames, the ghosts were being burned, the silent souls with no voice. But that silence made everything even more haunting. Beneath my feet were souls writhing in the fire that never ceased, while no one could save them. We, the souls tormented here, had no ability to beg for forgiveness, no ability to regret. Everything remained just pain and consequence. The deeper I went into hell, the more I perceived images, scenes replaying in my mind. I saw people I once knew, those who had passed before me. They weren't in the normal forms I remembered, but as ghosts tormented by horrific punishments. A close friend of mine who died of cancer was now caught in an endless whirlpool. She screamed, but there was no sound, only a look of deep pain, full of regret. She had lived a life full of mistakes, but now she could never go back, could never change anything. This was truly haunting. In that moment, I realized that hell is not a place of fire and physical pain, but a state of mind. Hell is where souls cannot escape their own sins. It is a vicious cycle, a place with no salvation, no light, no hope. A place where souls must face the evil deeds they committed throughout their lives. There is one thing I couldn't understand at that moment. Why is there a hell like this? Why do some souls have to endure eternal punishment, one that never ends? This question lingered in my mind, but there was no answer. Hell, with all its terror and cruelty, seemed inevitable, a part of the absolute law of justice from which no soul could escape. I stood there in the darkness, among the blue flames and suffering souls, and I realized that we all could end up here if we do not repent, if we do not change. Hell is not a place you go to after death, but a state you create through the actions of your life. A state of guilt, hopelessness, and a soul unable to forgive itself. I could not escape these terrifying images. The deeper I went, the more I became aware that this place was not just a physical space, but a spiritual one. Hell not only contains physical pain, but also punishes the soul spiritually, where we must face the wrongdoings we committed during our lives. Suddenly, I heard a sound. It was a laugh, not a joyful or mocking laugh, but a wild laugh full of disdain, as though someone were ridiculing their own self. I turned around and saw a soul, but not an ordinary one. It was not like the souls I had seen before, with no weakness or suffering. It was a soul full of arrogance, with cold eyes and a mocking smile. "Do you think you've suffered enough?" That soul said, its voice cold and detached, as if it was mocking itself. "You think you will escape? This hell is not for the weak. It is for those who have committed unforgivable sins." I could not speak, only stand silently, facing the painful truth. That soul smirked once more, then disappeared into the thick darkness. The further I went, the more I realized that hell is not only a place for sinful souls, but a place for everlasting obsessions, obsessions with sins that cannot be erased. I realized that in Christianity, hell is a place for souls that rejected salvation, souls that refused to repent, to change from their sins. One thing that gave me chills was the presence of those bright red lights, like flames, but not actual fire. These lights seemed to emanate from the pain of the souls imprisoned in hell. They were not the light of hope or salvation, but flames of guilt, images of wounds that would never heal, wounds we caused ourselves in our lives. The more I looked at those flames, the more I felt the pain clinging to those souls. There was a soul crawling on the ground, its body scorched, but not from fire. It was its own sins that had burned that soul, like a shadow that would never be freed. That was the image of despair, of a wasted life, of a soul unable to cleanse its sins. It could beg, it could plead, but it was all in vain. There was no forgiveness, No salvation for these souls because they had rejected salvation when they were alive. The most painful part was not the physical torment, but the realization of the wrongs they had done. Every soul here, they not only endure the pain of physical punishment, but also must confront their own wrongs, the unforgivable mistakes they made throughout their lives. The sins they committed, the unforgivable mistakes, have now become scars that will never fade. I saw a woman, perhaps a mother in a past life, with eyes full of regret. She begged, but not for forgiveness. She begged for only one thing, a chance to go back, to correct her mistakes. But in this hell, there is no going back, no second chances. All mistakes are preserved forever. She looked at me and said, her voice choked, if I could go back, I would never abandon my child. I would never let greed blind me. That sentence echoed in my heart, a reminder of regret, of a loss that could never be reclaimed. She realized the wrongs in her life, but now she must live with that pain forever. In hell, there is no salvation for those who do not repent when alive. As I moved further into hell, I saw more souls, each one trapped in their own torment, each one burdened by the weight of their sins. But there was one soul that caught my attention. It was a man who seemed to be king in his previous life. He stood tall, his posture regal, but his eyes were filled with despair. His crown, now tarnished and broken, lay at his feet. He looked at me with a cold gaze, as though he had accepted his fate, as though he no longer cared. You think I am here because of my sins? The man's voice echoed in the dark. I had power, wealth, everything anyone could ever want. But I was blind. I thought that because I had everything, I could do anything. I thought I could escape the consequences of my actions. His words cut through me like a knife. The arrogance in his voice was still present, but it was now mixed with a deep sorrow, the realization that all his wealth, all his power, had been meaningless in the end. He had failed to see that true power comes from within, from understanding, from compassion. He had lived a life of greed and selfishness, and now he was paying the price. Don't make the same mistake I did, he said, his voice quieter now. Do not let your pride blind you to the truth. It is too late for me, but it may not be too late for you. And then the man disappeared into the flames, his soul swallowed by the darkness. As I continued to walk through this endless void, I began to feel a growing sense of unease, a feeling that the place I was in was not just a physical space, but something much deeper. It was a place where time did not exist, where past, present, and future all collapsed into one. It was a place where the soul was forced to confront the deepest parts of itself, to face the choices it had made and the consequences of those choices. I began to understand. Hell was not just a punishment. It was a reflection. A place where souls were forced to confront the truth of their lives, to face their sins, regrets, and fears. It was a place of unrelenting self-reflection, where there was no escape, no distractions, no way to hide from the truth. I walked for what felt like an eternity, passing countless souls along the way, each one trapped in their own pain, each one unable to escape the consequences of their actions. Some of them were crying, some of them were silent, but all of them were suffering. And then I saw a light in the distance, a faint glimmer of hope. It was so small, so fragile that I almost missed it, but I felt drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I moved toward it, slowly at first, unsure of what it was or where it would lead me. As I got closer, the light grew brighter, and I realized that it was not just a light, but a presence that seemed to be calling me, beckoning me toward it. I reached out, and the light engulfed me, surrounding me in a warmth that I had not felt in what seemed like an eternity. In that moment, I felt peace, a peace that was beyond understanding, a peace that washed over me, cleansing me of all the pain, all the regret, all the guilt. I knew that I was not yet free, that I had not yet earned my redemption, but for the first time since I entered this place, I felt hope. The light, the presence, was a reminder that no matter how deep the darkness, no matter how far we have fallen, there is always a chance for redemption, always a chance for change. I don't know how long I stood there, bathed in the light. It could have been minutes, hours, or even days. But eventually, the light began to fade, and I knew it was time to leave. As I turned to go, I heard a voice that seemed to come from within me. "You are not yet finished," the voice said, "but you are on the right path. Keep moving forward, and you will find your way." And with that, the light disappeared, and I found myself standing at the edge of the darkness once again. I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if I truly left hell, or if I was simply lost in the void, wandering between life and death. But I do know one thing. My encounter with this place changed me. It made me realize that life is not about power, wealth, or fame. It is about the choices we make, the love we give, and the compassion we show to others. It is about living a life that is true to who we are, a life that seeks redemption, a life that seeks peace. Hell is not a place of eternal fire and brimstone. It is a place of self-reflection, a place where we must confront our past, our mistakes, and our fears. But it is also a place of learning, a place where we can find the strength to change, to become better, to become who we were meant to be. I may have left that place, but I will never forget what I learned there. And I will never forget the souls I met, each one a reminder of the choices we make and the consequences they bring. So, I ask you, what choices are you making in your life? Are you living with love, with kindness, with compassion? Or are you walking down a path that will lead you to regret, to guilt, to suffering? It is not too late to change. It is not too late to seek redemption. The light is always there, waiting for us to reach for it. Remember, hell is not a destination. It is a state of mind. And the path to peace begins with the choices we make, here and now. As I reflect on the journey I've just shared, it becomes clear that life is more than just the sum of our actions and choices. It is the energy we put into every thought, every word, every gesture, and every moment. The experiences we create are reflections of who we truly are within. Whether we walk a path of light or one shrouded in darkness, depends entirely on the choices we make every single day. Hell, as I came to understand it, is not just a place we go to after death. It is a state we create within ourselves. It is the result of unresolved guilt, unhealed wounds, and a life lived without meaning or purpose. But just as easily as hell can be created within, so too can it be transformed by our choices. Redemption, peace, and true fulfillment are not distant ideals. They are within reach if we are willing to look within ourselves and make the decision to change, to learn, and to grow. None of us are beyond redemption. No matter how dark our past may be, there is always a way to find the light. But the first step begins with a choice to let go of our ego, to surrender our pride, and to open ourselves to the possibility of transformation. So, ask yourself, what is the path you're walking today? Are you on a path of love, compassion, and self-awareness? Or are you letting past regrets or fears guide your steps? The power to change is in your hands. The journey of transformation may be difficult, but it is always worth it. And remember, every day is a new opportunity to choose differently. If this message has touched your heart, if you found something in these words that resonates with your own life or challenges, I invite you to share this video with those who may need to hear it. We are all on this journey together, and the more we open our hearts and minds, the more we can uplift each other. Subscribe to the channel for more stories, more lessons, and more insights that can help guide you toward a brighter, more meaningful life. Together, let's walk the path of transformation, and may we all find the peace and redemption we seek. Thank you for watching, and may your journey be filled with light.